It's a beautiful city. With the pulse of the sound under the boat, I know what they mean by the only worthwhile view of the city. From the boat, you can see the market, the first Starbucks, and the people standing in line for hours for a latte, or a mocha, or a picture to post. From the boat, you know this space, and with the sun sinking at your back, there's a comforting finality that this is your city, and you're safe. "I told you it's the only beautiful view," the voice behind you says. Because after all, where else can you really see Seattle, other than from the Bainbridge Ferry? It is a beautiful city. In our quest to discover what black spaces encompass and where they exist within Seattle, we collected the following stories.
Black space, for me, I define it as real and imagined spaces, as well as places, that have a high degree of blackness. And so when I think about that, I'm referring to, when I say real, I'm thinking about actual locations, communities, actual institutions like churches or businesses, but also actual bodies that have been racialized as black within a society that is predominantly defined by whiteness. So black spaces, if you think about it, can also be a paradox. So the paradox of black spaces, on the one hand, we have a dominant society that thinks of these spaces as being problematic, deviant, disposable, right? And really just devalued overall. There's no worth, they have no merit, they have nothing to offer our societies. And these spaces in this society, right, are often portrayed in that same light. So we think about spaces like the ghetto. And this is a term, while it doesn't originate in the US, but in the US context, ghettos are associated with these inner city communities predominantly filled by people of color, African American, Latinos, other immigrant groups that are coming to the US. Very densely populated. And over time, these communities become run down, and they become run down as a result of disinvestment by businesses and our government. They become run down by many of the agencies like housing authorities that are supposedly there to take care of these places, but they neglect them. They also become run down by other forces, mainly associated with poverty, right? So drugs come into the communities, and therefore we see an epidemic of addiction. They become run down because there are no jobs, so people are left basically doing more illegal or illicit types of things to survive. And so that combination of the aesthetics of black spaces and the things that happen in those spaces and the people who live in those spaces often represent this dominant, if you will, narrative that these are spaces to be avoided. They are not spaces that you want to be in. But then there's another side to that, right? Black spaces are also spaces where people call home. They are important places for building community, relationships, traditions, culture. And it's in those types of spaces that the people who live there, while they're aware of how the outside sees them, they also have their own way of seeing themselves. And so they are constructing ideas of black space that are much more transgressive, that are much more, if you will, counter to the dominant perspectives. And therefore, what may be seen on the one hand as dirty and basically devalued can be seen by others as something that is worthy, important, and very much something that we love. So black space, I would say in short, are spaces that are heavily associated with black identified bodies and black identified culture, but they're also spaces that we should not think of as just being bad, because there are also spaces that have tremendous value within our society.
Black space, like any space, is a social construction. The construction of black spaces in Seattle can be traced back to the arrival of William Gross in 1882. William Gross was the first black person to own land in Seattle. He flourished as a pioneer, businessman, and member of Seattle's emerging black bourgeoisie, or what historian Esther Mumford calls the Black Victorians. At his death, William Gross's land holdings were divided and sold to multiple black families. This became the roots of the Central District. By World War II, the black community flourished in Seattle, and the defense industry of the war caused a second wave of black migration. The dynamics of the community changed, however their physical presence stayed the same. Black communities remained in the same neighborhood due to racial covenants and redlining. These practices were executed by both the city and individual to intentionally keep black families out of certain neighborhoods. Beyond the Central District, blacks were not allowed to own homes, and landlords refused to rent to them. By the end of the 1960s, the Central District had been established as Seattle's historically black community. The 1970s would prove to be a turning point in the history of black Seattle. In the 1970s, the concentration of blacks living in the Central District was at its pinnacle. Blacks in the 1970s concentrated over 70% of the population of the Central District. In the decades following the 1970s, the black presence in the Central District began to fall precipitously. Even with this tragic legacy of uprooting black spaces, the 1970s continued to mark a transition into a new era of erosion of black spaces. With the passage of Seattle's Open Housing Ordinance on April 18, 1968, the 1970s marked new housing opportunities for Black Seattle. As throughout the rest of the United States, many of Seattle's black middle-class families fled their Jim Crow-era black ghettos in search of what had been sold as the American dream, suburbia. This fragmenting of Seattle's Central District coincided with a number of other socioeconomic forces that would ultimately weaken the economic and political base of Seattle's once historic black community. In a word, disinvestment was the politics and private sector practices towards urban or inner-city black spaces from the 1970s to today. This crippling of urban black spaces would manifest into media images and political discourse, especially during the 1980s and 90s, that portrayed the nation's inner-city communities as dysfunctional, dangerous, and ultimately disposable. Law and order. This became the campaign slogan of this time. The seeds of this more colorblind, white supremacist rhetoric were being planted as far back as the 1960s by Republican candidates like Barry Goldwater. Dre's, a local rapper, not only promotes the Seattle music scene, but also works as a community advocate. He speaks to how the war on drugs has shaped the identity of black space.
So if you look at a people who are placed here and they're trying to rebuild, and everything that we go through as African Americans in this land, there is a need to rebuild. So you have things like Weed and Seed. It's in the song. Weed and Seed was a program when I was younger in the 90s. I'm growing up here, and you got crack cocaine, right? Which is a whole other story. I won't throw that whole thing on you. Crack cocaine, we are just now recovering from that. And it wasn't our fault. That's the coldest thing about it. When you learn about crack cocaine, you learn that the CIA created crack cocaine and flooded our communities with it. These are facts. So here we are. This is why we start going institutional racism, and we start crying out and people get frustrated like, why are you crying about institutional racism? What's the big deal? No, there's a system that is literally coming at me, right? There's a system that is not fair to me, and I'm trying to find balance so I can get a level playing field to be able to achieve just like you. We're no different. My situation and my circumstance is different, right? So essentially you have African Americans here, you got crack cocaine, all that, so in a community, you have things like Weed and Seed. So they pass laws where they're saying, hey, what we're going to do is weed and seed. We're going to weed out and seed out all the drugs and violence in your community. So we're going to put some mandatory sentences on certain drugs, right? What do you think? We're going to put 15 years mandatory sentence if you're caught with crack cocaine. Sounds great on paper, right? But who has crack cocaine? You're not going to do that to cocaine, right? So I can have powdered cocaine. I can have a kilo of powdered cocaine and you're going to give me 6 months. I got one little crack rock and you're going to give me 15 years? That's just not fair. That's all I'm saying. I'm not condoning drugs on anyone. I'm just saying, let's keep it consistent. So you do that, and in my community, you have Weed and Seed come in, and when I grew up, it was a wrap. All I remember was all my friends and people I knew just disappearing. You remember, yeah, it was just like, man, where's everybody going? Right? Everybody's gone. They're in jail.
With policies like the war on drugs, this new era in a legacy of dismantling urban black spaces proves more difficult to name. In part, the images of inner-city communities in a state of disarray has allowed both political actors and private developers to speak a language of urban revitalization, uplift, empowerment, redevelopment. The erosion of black spaces in Seattle, such as the Central District, are a complicated phenomenon to explain. As a theoretical construct, gentrification does provide us with some perspectives. On the one hand, we can explain the gentrification of the Central District as a result of the need to produce. On the other hand, the gentrification of the Central District may be explained by a need to consume. Regardless of the theory being applied, The uprooting, dismantling, and erosion of urban black spaces are also the consequence of the fact that these spaces, with a high degree of blackness and black-identified bodies, have always struggled to exist in a society where blackness is rendered disposable.
There are a few things I want the community to know about black spaces in Seattle. I think the first is they still exist. Seattle has a reputation of being a white city. Right? In its sort of population, it's a fairly white-dominated city. Culturally, it's seen as a white city. And for many people, that perception leads us to assume that there's nothing else that exists here but whiteness. And while that may be the dominant culture and the dominant population, there's also a very important history of black spaces that have helped to construct and to create Seattle, as well as the Pacific Northwest more largely. And while those spaces have changed over time, right, especially when you think about the displacement and the gentrification that is happening in the central area, which has been seen as the historic black space of Seattle, and many of the bodies that live there are now displaced due south, but also to other parts of the country. They have left, I think, a great legacy of music, particularly jazz music, along the Jackson 23rd Street corridor. They've left a cultural aesthetic in the central area, places like Langston Hughes and other spaces of culture like the Pratt Performing Arts Center. They've left, I think, also a political legacy that we can remember of civil rights, to desegregate schools and to build community with things like CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and the Urban League, which still exists. Right? These are part of that legacy, I think, of black spaces. And how could I forget, right, the legacy of the black churches? Some of your first black churches on the West Coast, like Mount Zion and First AME, and a whole host of other churches in the central area in particular that have been part of that legacy of black space.
Mount Zion is one of many spaces that epitomize the legacy of black space in Seattle. One such space is the Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute, a historic theater in the Central District. It is the only theater paid for and run by the city. They preserve and present African American diaspora through performing arts. Langston Hughes isn't the only historic performance space in the Central District. Washington Hall was built in 1908 as a social and fraternal organization. For over 100 years, it has been home to black social and cultural activities. The former Liberty Bank site is located at 2320 East Union Street. It has recently been declared as a historic landmark. The bank was known for being an advocate for fairer banking services to minorities. The Life Enrichment Bookstore has been in the community for over 20 years. They provide books and materials that accurately reflect and celebrate the knowledge and history of the black community. The bookstore experiences firsthand the changing landscape of Black Seattle. Located in Columbia City, they've seen the disappearance of the community in their own neighborhood.
We're the only African-American bookstore in the whole Northwest that includes the whole state of Washington and also in Oregon. When I started out years ago, there was 4, at least 4, between like Tacoma. It was 2 or 3 here in the Seattle area, and I'm the only one that's still around. And say I'm gonna do 1 more year, 20 years, and I'm gonna retire and move to Mississippi. So we specialize in history books, have a lot of history, children's books, and those are the 2 main reasons I really want to keep the store going. It's because it's a children's book, so they can have books that look like them when I was growing up. we didn't have any books with no black people on the cover or about black people or authors. It was C, Spot Run, Susan, and all those type of books that we read basically growing up. And also the history books, just to keep the true history of our people, you know, who we are, where we came from, and a lot of stuff you're not going to get in school. You're not going to get the truth. A lot of the books, Barnes and Nobles and them say basically that they're out of print, but they're really not, especially if it's something that's going to give you the true history. So those are the two main reasons for the children's books and true history that I continue to keep the store open, as well as having a safe place for African Americans. But you know, there was mothers, there was sons, there was families that around here that I knew that are literally gone. Columbia City was nowhere near like this. It was just a few little businesses. It was mostly black, this whole Rainier area, African Americans. And of course, I've seen more and more continental Africans move in, and all other businesses. Even when I moved down here, there were vacancies all around. Now, all this over here was no businesses over here. Now that's full. I mean, anytime something comes available, somebody's got it. Or seen definitely a lot of changes. No, not that many African Americans, like I say, even people. They lived all just right up off of Rainier. You know, you talk to some of the people that grew up here, that's where they lived, all down in this area. So this has turned into gentrification, same just like the Central District, and the property's way high. And the further you go up off Rainier that way, the higher it gets. And so they closed down this place. It's now a apartment or retail. It went up so quick in a few months, but it used to be called Angie's. It was a nightclub or a tavern, and that was probably the last place, you know, where everybody was going. And once they actually shut that down, I just saw literally almost African Americans. Some of these people had been going to that club, couldn't even be up and down. Police, that first year, 6 months to a year, the police would slam up against cars, getting everything, trying to run them out. I mean, I literally saw it, you know. And, you know, anytime I'd see some of that stuff, I'd go out there and just stand, see what was going on. But it was just to basically get everybody that was around here that was going to that club and different things off the street. So I've seen a lot of different changes like that. In a way, I just kind of, I'm just here right in the middle of it, kind of, but I feel separate, and that's okay. You know, some of the things I try to, you know, support, and people in Columbia City don't really support what we have. So, like I say, I'm just right here, but we have good energy here in Life Enrichment Bookstore. You know, when we have our different events or whatever we got going on, we got good energy.
Izelle's Famous Chicken is a local black business that has been thriving in the community for over 20 years. The owner, Lewis, has experienced the change of the Central District firsthand.
There's no longer as many black businesses in the community that used to exist. I remember the gas station on the corner of 12th and Yesler, Lloyd's Rocket Fuel, and Mr. Lloyd that used to go around and provide gas to homes and places like that. He was one of my mentors, and his business is gone. A lot of businesses in the community that used to exist are no longer here. If we had not gotten the support from the black community, I don't think that we would have survived in business, because the odds were against us surviving, especially here. And there were a lot of times when we were warned about the crime, about the people in the community that's going to take us out of business, but instead the community rallied around easels. So for that, we are forever grateful to the black community and to the communities across the country that are struggling with the same challenges that people in this community are struggling with. And there's a debt of gratitude that's owed there to the community that we will be forever paying back to the community. And when you talk about black community today, I think about when I grew up down south versus here in the Northwest. There were lots of black communities, communities of color, black communities down south. And out here now I see what I consider to be a virtual black community. People from the black community that existed in the Central District, which was predominantly blacks, have scattered and moved abroad, moved away from the community, and now we're connected virtually over the internet, Facebook, social media, and we just kind of run into each other. And it's a new way of life for the black community, and as leaders in the community, and I consider myself to be one of those, in some ways self-appointed, in other ways appointed by the community, and I've accepted the responsibility and I've taken on a commitment to provide leadership where I can. I've taken a position to try and help the younger generation as well as some of the older generation to try and understand what it means now to live in a virtual community, to where we don't have physical buildings and a community where we all gather, but we have to have like minds and support like causes that benefit us all collectively.
Washington Hall is home to 206 Zulu. Zulu hosts a monthly series of hip-hop events, dance, and music performances.
Here we go, here we go. Put those hands in the air. Now put those hands up. Gotta put those hands in the air. Gotta put those hands up. Say la 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 la. Go yo 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 yo. We wanna say it again. Show them the party is the people and the people of the party. We don't want to just sit there. First and real, somebody say, oh yeah.
Universal Zulu Nation is a international hip hop organization that started in the Bronx 40 years ago, just this last November. I was in New York to help commemorate the 40th anniversary and did a lot of reflecting, thinking about, how do you describe Zulu Nation? I guess the best way to describe it is it's a hip hop culture organization that really tries to build community with other people who are involved in hip hop culture to make positive changes in our communities, to bring people together, to support one another, and ultimately to raise awareness about what the culture is about and to teach what it really is, as opposed to what the media or the corporations would portray hip hop to be. In hip hop, we define it in terms of just some basic elements. We start off with the DJ. The DJ is the foundation. Along with that, you have graffiti or aerosol arts. You have the B-boys and B-girls, who are the dancers. You have the MCs, who at the start of this whole thing were basically just people that were kind of hyping up the crowd for the DJ, and then later on, through poetry and routines in there. And then the fifth element is knowledge, and that's the concept of knowledge in hip hop is that you should be knowledgeable of your culture, but also of the world. You try to use that knowledge to help uplift people, to uplift yourself, and to find ways to live life, that could be perceived to be, wise and humble.
Amongst the historic creative spaces within the changing environment of the Central District, new art centers emerge. Run by local artists, Love City Love is a center that works to develop local art through relationships. They showcase and create art through installations and weekly community gatherings. Places like Washington Hall are an outlet for community gathering and activism. As the Black community is being pushed out of the Central District, many are finding homes outside of Seattle. Patterson's West and Federal Way has become a popular community gathering space.
These are the Adonis lowriders. I call them the felonies. I've been skating on these for about a year now. I've been skating on these since 1981.
My name is Darren Patterson, 32 years old. I'm the manager at Patterson's West Skating Center in Federal Way. Been here for 33 years. It's been my 6th year working here at the rink. It's a family business owned by my father, Mike. I mean, my great-grandfather owned a skating rink. My grandfather owned one, my dad, so it's pretty much everything I know. It's all we know how to do is just own roller skating rinks. So it's pretty much my life. Puts food on the table, and anybody that I associate my life with is pretty much connected to skating some way or another. So I owe everything to it. We were worried about doing an adult skate. We didn't know what to expect because we've never done this before, and it's been really just good people, and they're all just share one common interest, and that's just roller skating, and they're really crazy about it. But yeah, just having this place, I mean, it's got to mean something to some people, and gives them hope and gives them something to look forward to, and keeps them off the streets maybe 2 nights a week.
Everyone's like a family here, We all swap fives, we all give hugs, and so it's really like a family.
It's a gathering place. I bring all my friends here any chance I get, so something new for other people to kind of experience and see that there's actually like a world of skating and not just something that people do, just roll around in circles. So you actually sweat a lot.
I've been skating for 20 plus years, and I love skating. It's my passion. I love doing it. I skate like 3 times a week, from Bellevue to here, twice a week, so it keeps me from getting fat.
I go all around the world and skate. Down in Atlanta, we just came back from Alabama. They just had a skating party down in Houston as well. And that's one thing I try to get everyone here to do is visit other skating rinks in different cities to see the different styles. There's a lot of people my age and older still skating, and it keeps the young people together.
Well, I just got back from Alabama for a national skate party down there. Last year I went to Atlanta. It's called the Joy Skate-a-thon. You can Google her on the internet. Over 1,100 people skating, no drama. And we do parties here. People come up from all over, like California to, well, National Skate Party, we have people come from London. We have Skate Lisa, she's on the internet. You can Google her too. She's Skate Lisa, she's from Italy. And I mean, they travel. The community is huge with the skate world, so I'm glad to be a part of it.
Patterson's is the way to go.
Something to do, keeps me out of trouble, so.
Man, just like home, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, man, you go through a stressful week, you know what I'm saying? Bills, everything's piled on you, you know what I'm saying? And you come here and it's like, it's all left at the door. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it sucks when you leave that you can pick it up at the door, but it's just a cool place where you can leave your stresses at the door.
This farm site is located in the community of Rainier Beach in southeast Seattle. And at this point, Rainier Beach has been described from a recent census as one of the most diverse zip codes in the nation by the number of languages spoken in the neighborhood. So this project is 2.5 years old. In actuality, Seattle Tilth and I have been here working and trying to change the site into an urban farm for 2.5 years. So it's still kind of what I would consider a baby project. There was a lot of advocacy and organizing that was done for years before to get us to operating, but so far I guess the biggest change I've seen is it's gone from a space that was totally closed off to public to a space that's been embraced by the community. So a bunch of students from Rainier Beach High School just arrived, and we've got a team of 12 interns. We've got an elder program from the Parks Department and an elder program from the Ethiopian community, all of them here today together. Because everybody's thinking about their food and about their environment and how those two connect, and how, you know, little changes that we can make in our urban environments can begin to affect the larger system. At the same time that we started this farm, Seattle Tilth started a cooking program, which we call Community Kitchens Northwest. And that is a huge part of our work to bring more equity to the food system. Because while not everybody is going to grow their own food, everybody will be eating 3 times a day on a regular basis. So we kind of look at the food system as a merry-go-round, and there's lots of different ways to get engaged in it. You can start growing your own food, you can work with the distribution side or the composting side or the eating side. And so for us, having a cooking program is a way for everybody to get right on the merry-go-round of the food system and to begin to participate and feel the food system, learn about it, become empowered. And so us being able to feed people at this farm is totally central to what we're doing. We don't have the facility at the moment to do it on a larger scale, and it's a fairly rustic, as you saw, but there's a design has been done and a capital campaign is underway in order to build us a new kitchen.
The community garden highlights the increasing East African presence in Seattle. New programs and spaces are emerging due to the cultural demands that the immigrant population brings.
My name is Michael Nuguse, originally from Eritrea. I came here as a refugee in 1984, and I've been working with the community since then. And I'm very active in the East African community. I do civic engagement and community organizing, and I have a lot of jobs I do. You know, my main job is doing crime prevention in Southeast Seattle, working with residents there, organizing communities around crime prevention and civic engagement. And also I work part-time for Refugee Women Alliance. We have a lunch program for seniors from East Africa. We cook on site from scratch, and that's Thursdays and Saturdays. And during the summer, most of our produce we get it from this garden. We have some seniors, as you see, they are working on the garden, and we grow a lot of fresh vegetables and fruits, and we share it with everyone who comes here. And also we have cook on site here every Friday. So anyone who works here, volunteers, visitors, we have lunch together here. So anyone who wants to come to this garden is welcome to our lunch Fridays. And what we're trying to do here is most of our seniors, they came from farming background, and some of them, they were professionals back home. But what we're trying to do is here to teach them how to grow food in Northwest. And we teach them different techniques, you know, they can grow food, you know, in their backyard, or, you know, in pea patches and other gardening sites. And also, like job creation, we try to have like a farming incubator where elderly, they can grow their, you know, own vegetables and fruits and then sell. And that way they can be self-sufficient. You know, like I always ask for feedback, especially for the seniors or the students who have a refugee and immigrant background. And when they come here, they love it. You know, like they say this peaceful place. They come here, they make friends, you know, young and old, and then they start. In a way, I see it. Some of them, they go to ELL classes. You know, some of them, they've been going forever, and their English is not getting better. But here, they work side by side with English-speaking people and interacting and eating together and cooking together. So people are learning English as well. They are teaching others their languages and cultures. It gives them a chance to exchange cultures. You know, I've seen a lot of change. I've been around this area for a long time, but I see a lot of new faces, new people coming, moving to this area. And the long-time residents, they are moving because of gentrification. And we see a lot of new buildings, new housing, new condos. I want to see, you know, like people included, every race, every creed here in this, to be part of the community. And we are working closely with the city that to be very inclusive and to do more outreach, whether it's for, you know, urban gardening or community organizing, crime prevention, and to do more than what they are doing now, because we don't want anyone to be left out. In order to build a strong community, everyone who lives in the community, regardless their race, creed, they need to come together and work for a better community.
Black spaces are more than just wastelands. These are spaces that we should hopefully see as being very much full of culture and life and agency. And those are the types of things that I think as a society we have to come to embrace, that black spaces are not just spaces that we should avoid. They're spaces that we should invest all of our treasure in and really save.
I was born in the Central District, raised in the South End. I'm a homegrown kid, yep, 206 living. Used to play flyers up when I lived up on Union. Pushed it out to Orcus and eventually the Kenyans. Didn't have much, but thankful for all we was given. It was all hood until Weed and Seed crept in. And the blacks went naked and gentrification came. Garfield, Franklin, robberies ain't even the same. Mark my words, it gonna be white boys all on the team. I don't reminisce when I drive through this hood, I feel pain. I ain't proud of these new developments, I feel shame. shame. And I ain't trying to preach at these young brothers just spit game. I guess Kent's the new South End, and the South End's the CD, and the CD is just a thing of the past. But I remember Sammy's Burgers, Soul Food down in Helen's, Holly Hill back when Ducey was full of felons. Now the streets is naked, yeah they claim it, but nobody banks it. My man called me from the joint, I said this thing is changing. He said, young homie, what you mean? I said I can't explain it. These folks is moving us around just like an experiment. The city ain't the same, the South it ain't the same, and all around the world I see the same thing. Hurting people like cattle, man, I swear it's so strange. Picket signs don't change minds, they laughing at our pain. I heard Brooklyn ain't the same, and Harlem ain't the same, and all around the world I see the same thing. Black men in the White House and ain't nothing changed. Playing checkers with our lives, but I'm seeing through the game. Okay, I get it, it's supposed to be the melting pot, but am I wrong for wanting to live around my own? Loitering in the park, brown bag sipping, slap box and dice game, fried chicken for Richlands. Drive by tooting my horn, what up pimpin'? This is the town in 95, good living. Sewer Park was poppin', Black Fest, Soul Fest. Rose from these L's, man them things was so fresh. Used to own our homes, now we're all renters. Got folks moving south like birds for the winter. They asked mama to sell her home, she said no, but then we had to shake when them property taxes rose. I know you say you ain't the ones in them white sheets, but these suits and ties are similar to me. Don't try to paint me as the black man who's angry. When you gut my community, it's hard to build a legacy. I can rally the troops, but I deal with it. I see through you, greed, power, and privilege. Yo, I can rally the troops, but I deal with it. I see through you, greed, power, and privilege. The city ain't the same, the South it ain't the same, and all around the world I see the same thing. Hurting people like cattle, man, I swear it's so strange. Picket signs don't change minds, they laughing at our pain. I heard Brooklyn ain't the same, and Harlem ain't the same, and all around the world I see the same thing. Black men in the White House and ain't nothing changed. Playing checkers with our lives, but I'm seeing through the game. Yo, just hold the drums, man, let that guitar run, I like how that feels. I've been talking so much yeah on this mixtape, I figure I should let you know I do it. For the South End, I do it for the Central. I do it for the one who blow trees to ease their mental. I do it for the hustlers, I do it for the grimy. I do it for the young knuckleheads coming up behind me. I do it for the church, hell I do it for the sinners. Cause my prayer is that one day they'll all be repentance. I do it for the love, hell I do it for the culture. Never for the labels cause they blood-sucking vouchers. I do it for the cash, I gotta pay my bills. For Nana and mama, man, that family life is real. I do it for the whoo. I love how that feel when they play that hit back like that new Dre's is ill. I do it for Zimbabwe, yep, they're my people. I say some fly-ish, but I ain't really on no ego. No disrespect to Pops, but I do it for my mama. Enough said, just know I do it.